welcome to this, the fifth episode of the Forrin Podcast, the podcast for foreigners of every flavour. My name is Mike Bowden, and I'm broadcasting from Odense in Denmark. And you are?
I'm Patrick Garrett, and I'm recording this in Montpellier in the south of France. 5 episodes, Mike. I feel as though we've achieved something.
Yeah, it's almost like it's halfway to 10.
That's it. Yeah.
Which is a kind of I don't know what. Yeah, 10 is double figures, Pat. So we'll get there.
It was never in question, Mike. We will arrive.
So this week we're going to be it's going to be your news story, Pat.
Yep.
And after the roaring success of my one last week, the pressure is well and truly on. And then we're going to talk a bit about Britain, our favourite subject.
I love Britain, Mike. It's my best place.
And not just Britain, Pat. You know, the Conservative Party, which is even better.
Yeah, God, fucking, this is just like the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah. So, are you ready for Rishi? That's the that's the question.
Is anyone?
Is anyone?
We'll see how that goes. Yeah.
So if we start from the beginning with the
from the top.
Mike. Have you got the jingle ready for the news story of the week?
News story of the week. Let's go. So, are you ready for my news?
Yeah, hit me with it, please.
Okay, let's go. So, the news story I wanted to talk about this week is the march against antisemitism, which took place in France a couple of weeks ago on the 12th of November and attracted a massive crowd. 182,000 people marched, of which 100,000, over 100,000 were in Paris. So a lot of people. The reason for this is because since the start of the war between Israel and Gaza, there's been a large increase in anti-Semitic incidents in France. I think around 1,400, documented incidents of people painting the Star of David on people's houses, people desecrating mosques, etc., etc. And really, this march was in sort of opposition. Well, no. So really, this march was kind of in a reaction to the regular and constant pro-Gaza marches calling for a ceasefire in the war.
Right.
So the reason I wanted to talk about this is because on the face of it, it seems like, obviously everyone would be like united against racial hatred, etc., etc. But the important thing I think to note is that Marine Le Pen, along with several of her deputies from the Rassemblement National, actually attended this march. Her party was formerly known as the Front National, the National Front, and it's the mainstream face of the extreme right in France. Emmanuel Macron, who is the president of France, La République en Marche, did not participate, and I wanted to talk about why, because it may seem a little bit confusing as to why, if you're not really au fait with this very specifically French issue. So, just to briefly talk about Marine Le Pen. Obviously, talking about Marine Le Pen is pretty horrible at the best of times, but she's the president of as I said, the Rassemblement National, which means the National Rally. Right. And her party's policies are primarily anti-Islamic. It's literally and if you go to her website, if you ever should feel the need, she has a list of 22 policies, and number one is, in French, arrêter l'immigration incontrôlée en donnant la parole aux Français par référendum, which means stop uncontrolled immigration by giving the French a voice through a referendum. And I talked briefly about this immigration bill that's being handed over to the Senate this month. That's been a lot of toing and froing over it, and it really is centered on this issue of immigration and whether or not the French people should be allowed to be able to talk about changes to French immigration policy, which I'm going to outline in a second, via a referendum. Because we all know that when people get the right to have a referendum, it goes really well. I can't think of like a of an issue recently that went spectacularly well when people were allowed to vote yes or no on things. But I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a little while. Yeah. And so under this is policy number 1, which is like broken down into points. And the first point underneath that is mettre fin à l'immigration de peuplement et au regroupement familial. So that means ending settlement immigration and family reunification. Now, to explain what this means, Mike,
yes,
I need to provide a little context as to the relationship between Algeria and Morocco and France.
Okay.
It's important because this is going to explain why Le Pen marched and Macron did. So, for those of you that didn't know, our billions of listeners, both Morocco and Algeria were colonized by France. They're both in North Africa, if you're not aware of that. And really, the immigration policies that France has in place relating to Algeria and Morocco were really were heavily influenced, obviously, by this historical relationship. So, as it stands at the moment, Algerian people who have family in France can very easily emigrate to France. So, very briefly, in the 50s and 60s, basically Morocco and Algeria won independence from France, like violently. And certainly in Algeria's case, there was a war in Algeria, the Algerian War, which ended in 1962. So, like after the Second World War, there was an explosion in immigration from Algeria to France,
right?
Because basically conditions in Algeria were absolutely terrible. Everyone was like really, really poor. It was really horrible. And basically, France actually made it extremely easy to emigrate from Algeria to France because they wanted to alleviate the situation in Algeria and maintain control of the colony. After the end of the War of Independence, which was pretty horrible, if you ever want to read about it, it was pretty spectacularly awful. It was made law that anybody effectively with an identity card that was Algerian could circulate completely freely in France. Like there was the rules were made extremely easy for people to emigrate from Algeria to France. So kind of as a result of that, like the main cause to come from Algeria to France and Morocco was to work. After all this happened, we have what Marine Le Pen calls and what is some other people call as well, l'immigration de peuplement, which means settling immigration, which means that people are just coming here, as opposed to they don't have to actually justify working to come here. Normally, for example, I don't know if you've ever done anything like this, but say I wanted to go to Australia or I wanted to go to America, I would have to have a pretty bloody good reason to do that.
Right. I mean, even when I moved to Denmark, my initial kind of permit was a work permit.
Yeah, exactly. But like that's not the case here, and it's rooted in colonization, effectively. So as it stands now, there are around estimated around like just under 1 million Algerian people in France, and it's the same for Moroccan people as well. So just to put that in context, like France has by far the largest per capita population of Muslim people in Europe, like just under 6 million people who live in France are Muslim, which is, I think that's about the size of the population of Denmark, is it?
Yeah, Denmark's about 5.5 million, yeah.
Yeah. And it also has 6.7 million foreigners in total, like live in France, which is roughly 10% of the population. So after all of that, now you can see maybe, or like why the March Against Anti-Semitism was such a highly charged event. Because
turn the dots for us,
the march actually saw the participation of a lot of like very key political figures, like not just from the far right, but from the government. So like the Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne, she was there, and there were 2 former presidents there, Nicolas Sarkozy and Francois Hollande. They were both there as well. But the fact that Macron wasn't there does kind of indicate that the issue is becoming like really, or has become like very polarized along left and right lines. And it's all about this immigration policy. So the reason that Le Pen marched, and she's been heavily criticised for it because the National Front has been historically associated, obviously, with anti-Semitism. Like, her father specifically, I'm pretty safe in saying that the guy's a fascist. Like, he admitted to torturing people in the Algerian war. He participated actively. They found a dagger, a Nazi youth dagger with his name inscribed on it.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty cool. And like which I think he was pretty obvious. He was a pretty horrible guy. Like, Marine Le Pen actually kicked him out of the party in 2015 because she, like I said, she wanted to obviously make the Rassemblement National more mainstream, basically. And like so getting rid of her dad was like a bit like the Crystal Nacht. Like just get rid of those fucking guys. So
It sounds like the dad who lived next door to Kevin Spacey in American Beauty. I don't know if anyone's seen that film, but
it's literally like that. Like, it's exactly the same.
That's it. The paraphernalia of World War II.
So Le Pen marched. Basically, obviously, she's extremely right wing, and but she's effectively anti-Muslim and anti-immigration, and therefore aligned with a pro-Israel march. So Macron and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's the far left leader in France as well, they refused to march. Like Mélenchon said that he considered it a whitewashing for the extreme right. And Macron was actually forced to explain his absence. And he said that he had to, like, yet again, he had to sort of say that he's both like pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian. Like, he supports the sort of like two-state solution.
Yeah.
So like, he can't be seen like marching alongside Marine Le Pen. So, in conclusion, Mike,
right.
the March Against Anti-Semitism shed light on the complex interplay of historical, political, and social factors in French society, challenging the apparent unity against hatred and discrimination. And that's why I wanted to talk about it this week. And that is my news of the week.
That last sentence, you read that.
I have got that written on a bit of paper.
Yeah. Because I thought that would have been pretty amazing if all of a sudden you just and there
you go.
In Denmark, there has been a sort of a nationwide march. Believe it or not, Pat and I talked to each other, so I kind of knew what it was he was going to talk about before he actually spoke about it, and I was going to see if there was anything similar. There was a sort of a unified march across several cities in Denmark. Odense wasn't one of them. Copenhagen, Aarhus, Aalborg, and a few others, but no numbers were mentioned. I've also been looked up that there's that just anti-Semitism in general in Denmark. Jews feel that from 2018, anti-Semitism has been rising, and many now, quite obviously, after this conflict, feel even more sort of unsafe and insecure. And
it's a difficult issue, like in Europe, obviously, like especially in France. Like it's a really, really loaded question because France has, like, as well as the highest population of Muslims in Europe, the highest population of Jewish people in Europe as well. So 500,000 Jewish people live in France.
Right. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's true, and also it's important to remember that the Vichy government during the war actually played a pretty key role in the Holocaust. So I think some 75,000 Jewish people were actually deported from France, and I think more than 70,000 of them died in Auschwitz. So like it's really, really complicated, and like it's not. I also, like, I do need to say this as well. Like the march, the demonstration in France is a really key part of like French political life, like marching, going out in the street.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I kind of actually know that, Pat. You don't have to tell me. No, but I know that France is a very kind of people take to the streets to protest. Yeah. So what I was going to and that's something that the French do, and the French are famous for. So I was actually going to ask you, in comparison to other marches, even though 100,000 people in Paris sounds a lot. Is it a lot relative to other things?
It is a lot. Like, I mean, it's like, I mean, I don't actually know, like, but like in terms of, I think some of the biggest marches that have happened happened recently are things like the Gilets Jaunes protests, which happened a few years ago against like the rise in petrol, which turned into like a far left thing basically, and some of those marches were large, but like 100,000 people anywhere is a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean? There are a lot of like, even though obviously I sort of talked about the sort of background of like anti-immigration and Muslim politics and blah, blah, blah. It's, the huge majority of people on that march were simply there to say like, fucking stop being anti-Semitic, please. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, they're just like normal people that really don't want like religious hatred in their country. I think, a lot of people on those marches where, they go to the ceasefire marches as well, which are effectively pro Gaza. You see a lot of Palestinian flags there as well. But yeah, I think it's important to understand like the place of the demonstration in French politics. Obviously, France is the home of the revolution. If you want to say something, you go out onto the streets, and that's why like Macron not being there and Marine Le Pen being there is like really significant.
And so, but how has this kind of gone down? I was going to say internationally, but I don't mean it. I mean like within the French people. Has like, is it as it's controversial on a kind of on a political level, but is it something that the general public kind of care about?
Yeah, like it is. Because, well, no, I'm not sure
his
about
numbers. Basically,
I'm not sure about that. I think like what's more important is the fact that Le Pen was there more than Macron not being there. Macron not being on a march, I mean, it's just kind of like here and there. I mean, like, I say that it is significant, but like it's not. What's really important is that like Marine Le Pen was there. Marine Le Pen is a fascist. She's like, she wants to get rid of, she wants to stop people coming to our country, stop people like using our hospitals, that aren't French, etc. Like, prioritize French people for jobs, for social housing. She wants to cut benefits for non-French people, etc., etc. She's far right. So the fact that she basically marches on this march isn't just saying, I want people to stop discriminating against Jews. That's not what it is. I mean, yeah, partly, obviously, but like it means that like she's saying this is a place that I want to be politically. I want to be in this crowd.
Yeah.
So like if which crowd you stand in, like on a Saturday or a Sunday in France really does matter. There are pro Gaza rallies like every Saturday in Montpellier.
Okay.
Like thousands of people in the middle of Montpellier every Saturday waving Palestinian flags. That is something that is happening at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. News of the week.
That was it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
That was interesting. Thank you very much.
That's okay, Mike. Come on then. Let's hear about fucking Britain. Let's go.
Oh my God.
Go on, let's hear it. This had better be good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where to start.
Do you know what I mean? Come on. Let's go.
I don't know where to start. We could start in 2016. There was a vote.
Let's start at the beginning, Mike. Let's go.
Well, I'll start at the news. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a news story, really, that triggered the whole thing. But it actually does branch a little bit over to France, and it also branches to Denmark, and it also branches to Britain now, and Britain in the not too distant past. But Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And he wants to stop the boats, Pat. He wants to stop the boats.
Those fucking boats.
That's it. Which and boats for anyone listening is dinghies, and because but it's just the imagery of the word. You know what I mean? Stop the boats. It's like Britain is surrounded by these sort of warships,
being invaded.
Sort of invading the country. And what it's about is that there are people crossing the English Channel from France who Britain kind of, according to Al Jazeera, I need to get my sources clear, sort of there is a certain amount of blame on that the French aren't doing enough to sort of stop them. So the French are saying, yeah, go on, come through, cross the Channel, that's fine. And so Rishi Sunak And I mean, I didn't actually know this. I haven't had enough time to research the sort of the chicken and egg, because the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, she also had this fantastic idea that we don't want loads of people. We've got a complete backlog of asylum seekers. A lot of them maybe have just crossed the border illegally. So let's send them to Rwanda.
Where else?
Yeah, where else? And Rishi Sunak had, Boris Johnson actually had the initial idea. So most likely it was just another great British idea that that maybe the Danish government also borrowed. But do you actually know why Rwanda? Like, I've seen the headlines, but I don't actually know why Rwanda is like because
the place.
I think from what I can gather, and so the answer is no, I don't precisely know, but Rwanda wants the money. We're going to pay them 150 million US dollars, or we, and I say we, I don't mean Denmark now, I mean Britain, 150 US dollars. And they said, yeah, we've got the space and we've got the infrastructure. So Boris Johnson wanted it done, and weirdly enough, loads of human rights organisations sort of were a bit up in arms about it, mainly for many reasons. One reason is that Rwanda apparently isn't safe. It's they also have their own kind of long list of maybe human rights record that isn't so sort of savoury and need further investigation. And also because a lot of these people who are on the boats coming over the channel, the asylum seekers, are pretty tired and have gone through quite a lot to get from where they were to where they are now. And they've also have most likely mental health issues and stress and trauma from the war, and then kind of boxing them up and flying them to a foreign country that has dubious human, well, not a foreign country, obviously they're in a foreign country, but a country far, far away from where they want to be that has a dubious human rights record, that there's also quite a high chance of them deporting them back to the country they came from Rwanda, is maybe not a good thing. So, and it's all France's fault. No, it's not. It's so France and Denmark kind of are in the picture slightly. But anyway, Boris Johnson had the idea. Rishi Sunak, one of his pledges was he's going to stop the boats, and but now the UK Supreme Court has deemed Rwanda to be unsafe. So they've looked at, they've spoke to human rights organisations and people out there in Rwanda, and they've come to the conclusion that it's not safe. And so that kind of scuppers Rishi's plans. And, you know, if the story ended there,
what's Rishi going to do about it, Mike?
Well, Rishi, don't mess with Rishi, because he is now going to make some emergency legislation.
Wicked!
To say that it is. Yeah. So, and nothing is going to stop him. And these kind of kangaroo European courts of human rights in Strasbourg, he's going to fight them as well. Mike, because obviously, post-Brexit, we are not going to allow foreign courts to dictate
after Brexit, Mike, Britain took back control.
That's it. And this is Rishi taking control. This is what control looks like. And the story, again, would be funny, tragic funny, if it ended there. But the guy that is the new foreign secretary that's going to fight these battles, is going to put these European courts of human rights, which Britain kind of actually were the first people to sign in like 1951, doesn't matter, going to put them in their place, is excuse my language, is David fucking Cameron, Pat.
Say it ain't so.
David Cameron.
Oh my God.
And David Cameron was the guy who, to appease the far right in his own party, The only reason was to shut people like Rees-Mogg, etc., conservative politicians who are far right. If you don't know these people's names, it doesn't matter. To shut them up and to stop talking about sovereignty and taking back control. Okay, we'll have a vote if we should be in Europe or not. We'll win that, and then you can shut up, and then I can get on with my job.
No,
things didn't work out
went a bit wrong,
how he planned them to. It went a bit wrong, and because they didn't work out how he planned, because he campaigned to remain in Europe. So David Cameron campaigned for British foreign policy in a way to adhere to European law. And now he is going to be the guy that's going to say, well, you can shove your European law up your ass because we're Britain and we're going to make, we've got our UK Bill of Rights.
It's better than yours.
UK Bill of Rights trumps, it's better than yours. And we're going to, nothing is going to stop those planes from leaving to Rwanda. And I just think it's, as I said, Cameron resigned. He then kind of retreated to some shack in the mountains for like 7 years. And then we had to endure Theresa May, and then who no one voted for, Boris Johnson, who no one voted for, and then people did actually vote for, which is, you get the politicians you deserve, Britain. And, he was drinking, he was drinking with his mates at Christmas while the Queen couldn't go and see her dead husband. And amongst and also covered up for his kind of, for one of his colleagues sending sort of sexist sort of messages to other people and stuff. In the end, lost his job. And so then we get Rishi Sunak, who no one votes for. I think I read that the British economy is still suffering after the consequences of Brexit. And so obviously the amount of money, £31 million or something, or £31 billion a year is being used on asylum seekers. And that's why we want to send them off to Rwanda, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we'd have a bit more money if we didn't fucking leave Europe, you idiots. But the guy responsible for all of it, responsible for everything, David Cameron, is now the guy going to war with the European court. Well, not just. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? It's not just Europe, but it's the European Court of Human Rights. That's the target. That's the bad guy. The enemy. God. So in a way, I mean, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about that, Pat? There you go.
I'm pretty glad I'm not an asylum seeker trying to get into Britain. Put it that way. Like, I think foreignness in Europe can be pretty tricky, but foreignness in Britain is just like a special brand of foreign. Like I don't I just Britain just shocks me at every turn, like every level.
But there's a great Guardian article. I just love the headline of it. I mean, I can link it for people that want to read it. It's written by a woman called Helena von Bismarck, and she's a Hamburg-based historian specialising in UK-German relations. But the headline says it all. In Europe, we can't help laughing at David Cameron's return. But it also says this, but she also adds, but we welcome it too, because he's slightly more centrist in general, maybe not on the issue of immigration, but slightly more centrist than Rishi and his cronies. Then maybe, even though there's hopefully only less than a year left for Sunak, that maybe he'd be a good actually person to deal with, rather than the idiots that Britain has sent previously. But so Europe's laughing again at Britain with David Cameron being foreign secretary. So I don't know. It's I just had to. I had to get it out.
We'll get back to what it was like being at school next week, Mike.
That's it. Yeah, we'll go back to the more kind of delicate issues of what it was like for me and you being here. This was an easy one. So there's been no contact this week, Pat. The audience, I think they're so stunned they haven't been able to reach out. They're probably just lifting themselves off the floor.
That's it.
But if you do, if you can text while you're lying on the floor,
please speak to us.
Then then we are available for email at theforrinnpodcast@gmail.com. You can also, as the cool kids say, slide into our DMs at Forrin Podcast. That sounds really kind of sort of some quite strange sexual undertones. That, but anyway, yeah. So you can direct message us on Instagram at Forrin Podcast, and yeah. And I think that probably wraps it up, does it not?
I think that was episode number 5, Mike.
Yeah, and until next time, episode 6, Pat.
Episode 6.
And the onus is on me now to top your
my news of the week.
Yeah, the news of the week. Yeah, looking forward to it. Okay, mate.
Okay.
Okay, everyone.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.